Have you ever felt
The harder you chase happiness, the further it runs from you?
as if happiness is only an illusion? A trap designed to make you keep running but never arrive?
Here's the dark fact. 95% of people fail to achieve happiness, and not because they don't try, but because they're trapped in a system designed from the start to make them fail. Since childhood, we've been fed a definition of happiness that isn't ours. School, family, media, all inject standards we're told to follow. Money, partners, status. But have you ever asked yourself, who created those standards? Here's a secret rarely spoken. Your happiness isn't yours.
It's controlled, manipulated, even experimented on like lab rats. History records many terrifying experiments on humans and happiness.
In the 1940s, Nazi psychologists conducted brutal tests to find the breaking point of humans. They discovered something horrifying. People could be made to feel content by giving them just a little false control.
Happiness could be produced,
Then destroyed. And since then, the modern world has used it. Social media is the latest version of that experiment. You think you're happy when you get likes? It's just a dopamine trap, a dark psychological snare, making your brain addicted to validation. Why do almost everyone fall into this trap?
because the system is designed to make you feel incomplete.
Every time you achieve something, a new standard appears. A bigger house, a better body, a more perfect life. Do you realize? You're forced to keep running with no finish line? Another dark fact. The human brain is built to be more sensitive to pain than happiness. We remember trauma faster than joy. That's why one bad event can leave someone depressed for years, even after hundreds of happy moments. Doesn't that feel unfair? As if we're programmed to fail at finding true happiness. History also shows great civilizations didn't fall just from war, but from their people's inner emptiness.
Rome didn't just fall to barbarians. Its citizens lost their sense of meaning,
They were surrounded by parties, luxury, entertainment.
but felt hollow. Doesn't that sound like our world today? You might think, so is happiness impossible?
The answer, yes, if you keep looking for it outside yourself. Here's the forbidden truth rarely revealed. True happiness cannot be chased.
The more you chase it, the more it slips away.
Because happiness isn't a goal. It's a side effect. A side effect of what? Of meaning. Of pain consciously endured. Of suffering faced without running. Dark psychology reveals humans feel most alive when they struggle, not when they indulge. That's why soldiers in war often report a strange sense of peace, even amid horror. Because for a moment, they are truly present, no longer chased by the world's fake standards. Do you realize how terrifying this is?
The happiness we chase every day is just a construction.
And that construction was built by those who want us submissive. Have you ever wondered why ads always sell happiness? Why every product, from soap to cars, uses the word happy? Because happiness is the most effective propaganda weapon. Nothing is easier to manipulate than a person starving for happiness. That's why 95% fail. They chase shadows, not reality.
They're driven by dopamine, not meaning. They're forced to believe happiness lies outside, when the secret is hidden in their wounds. Another dark fact. Our brain has a hedonic treadmill. Every time we get what we want, our brain adapts, then feels empty again.
You want a raise.
You're happy a week.
Then empty. You want a new lover.
You're happy a month.
Then empty. And this cycle repeats, without end. Doesn't this sound like a cruel experiment with no exit?
A psychological prison with invisible bars where we're all inmates. Another darker secret, happiness is dangerous.
People who are too happy become passive, easy to control, rarely rebel. That's why the system doesn't want you totally destroyed, but also not fully awake. It just wants you happy enough to work, empty enough to keep buying, tired enough to stop asking questions. So what about the 5% who succeed?
What makes them different?
Here's the hardest truth to accept. They stopped chasing happiness.
They embraced suffering.
They found meaning in the pain others avoid. They escaped the dopamine trap by realizing pain is the key to growth. Have you ever felt strangely relieved after crying hard? Or calm after surviving the hardest time of your life? That's proof that suffering, not pleasure, is the door to true peace. But here's the truth you don't want to hear. Happiness isn't a gift. It's a side effect of your courage to face the darkness. 5% fail because they're afraid to look at that darkness. They shut their eyes, run toward false light, hoping the outside world will save them. But true happiness only appears when you dare to sit with the demon inside you. and conquer it. So, are you ready to accept this secret? Or will you stay part of the 95% chasing illusions until you die hollow?
The choice is yours.
But remember one thing. After hearing this, you'll never see the world the same way again. But wait, do you really believe that happiness is humanity's ultimate goal?
Or is it merely an illusion deliberately planted so we keep feeling empty?
Since ancient times, philosophers have warned about the danger of happiness. Epicurus, for example, is often misunderstood as a philosopher of pleasure. In truth, he said, the more you chase pleasure, the more enslaved you become by it. Happiness, he said, is merely a byproduct of living simply and free from fear. But modern civilization rejects this idea. Why?
Because a society that is not hungry for happiness is hard to control. Imagine if tomorrow morning everyone in the world suddenly felt enough. No longer wanting new things, new status, new recognition. What would happen? The economy would collapse.
The entertainment industry would die. Advertising would lose all meaning. That's why the world needs you to stay empty, to always feel lacking, to keep running after something you can never quite grasp. Another hidden fact comes from experimental psychology.
In the 1960s, Martin Seligman conducted an experiment now famous as learned helplessness.
Dogs that were repeatedly shocked without escape eventually stopped trying, even when the door was opened. They sat still, passive, lifeless. Do you realize? This is exactly what's happening to modern humans. We're surrounded by small failures, pain, and disappointment until the brain gives up. We stop trying to find meaning. We just surrender to empty routines, hoping happiness will fall from the sky. But it never comes. Isn't it terrifying?
That you could live 70 years.
Without ever truly living.
And worse still, most people never realize they're in a cage. They smile in photos, laugh at parties, update statuses about being happy.
But when they're alone, they're quietly breaking apart. Happiness in the digital age is a stage play. It's all fake.
And we're all actors in a drama we never chose. Have you ever felt envy seeing someone else appear happier on social media?
That's not an accident. That's design. Algorithms deliberately show you the best versions of others, so you feel the worst version of yourself. Your happiness is being manipulated by machines. Machines that don't even have hearts. But there's something even darker.
Did you know major corporations hire neuroscientists just to figure out how to keep you unsatisfied?
They study your brain patterns, your dopamine, your trauma. Not to heal you,
but to sell you more products they call the path to happiness. Ironically, the harder you search, the more your soul breaks. You become a slave.
A slave to something that should have been simple. Do you know why monks, Sufis, and ascetics of old often lived poor but peaceful lives? Because they discovered the secret the modern world hides. Happiness cannot be bought, cannot be flaunted, cannot be imprisoned in anyone's definition. Here's the dark secret you don't want to hear. True happiness is born of loss, of separation,
of the pain that shatters your ego. That's why many people feel reborn after tragedy, after losing someone they love,
after nearly dying in an accident,
after falling to their lowest point. Because that's where all illusions collapse.
And what remains is a silence that cannot be sold at any price. But most people are too afraid to go there.
They refuse to suffer.
They avert their eyes from their wounds. They cover their pain with alcohol, entertainment, or shopping.
Yet the wound itself is the doorway. Are you brave enough to open that door?
Or will you remain part of the 95% who fail, living in illusion until the end?
History is full of people who chose that door.
From the Buddha leaving his palace to Nietzsche staring into madness and finding meaning in the will to power. They all realized.
Happiness is not light but fire. Fire that burns you down and reshapes your soul. Another rarely discussed psychological fact.
The human brain needs contrast to feel alive.
Without suffering, happiness loses its meaning. That's why the rich, who have everything, often fall into depression. Because without pain, their lives feel flat. Empty, frightening, isn't it? That suffering, the thing we hate, is the very reason we can feel happiness at all. But let's go further. What happens to a nation if 95% of its people fail to find meaning?
History holds the answer. The Soviet Union didn't collapse just from economics, but because its people drowned in emptiness. They lost purpose, given only empty propaganda about collective happiness. Does that sound familiar to our world today? We're flooded with ads, entertainment, false promises. But the more we consume, the emptier we feel. And here's the truth few dare to speak. The world does not care about your happiness. No government, no company, not even another human being is truly responsible for it.
It's only your responsibility. But isn't that terrifying? That no one can save you.
That all the shortcuts to happiness are cheap illusions? This reality is bitter, but also freeing. Because once you stop chasing happiness,
you start living. Imagine this. Tomorrow morning, you wake up without thinking whether you're happy or not. You simply live. Do what needs to be done. Face pain without running.
And without realizing it, you feel calm. Not because you found happiness, but because you stopped being enslaved by it. This is the path the 5% who succeed take. Not a bright and beautiful path, but a dark one full of wounds. Yet beyond that darkness, they discover something stronger than happiness. Tranquility. A tranquility that cannot be stolen, cannot be bought, cannot be manipulated, and cannot be faked. The question now is, are you brave enough to take that path? Or will you keep deceiving yourself with fake smiles and the world's standards of happiness? Because if you choose to stay on the old path, don't blame anyone when your life ends in regret. And if you choose the honest, dark path, then be ready. You may not laugh often. You may cry a lot. But beneath it all, you'll feel something far more valuable than mere happiness. You'll feel freedom, and after this,
you'll never see happiness the same way again.